P&R with Adam R. This episode of 3 P&R is featured on the UnX Network. Welcome to 3 P&R. I'm your host, Adam R., and with me on this episode is Miranda Young from Ghost Biker. How you doing, Miranda?
I'm doing great, Adam. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being on. I'm glad to have your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Before we dive in, let's talk about what put Miranda on the path of the paranormal.
You know, really for me, it's more about the storytelling aspect of it. And I really got interested in that when I was a young child. My grandmother, she was, she would always share stories and tell me about growing up in the Appalachian Mountains. And so between her and my dad, they both really instilled the importance of storytelling. Dad would take me out on the weekends to some of the different towns that were no longer around. I guess you could say we were kind of urbexing back before it became real popular. And then the other times I would just spend my time there on my grandma's porch. I would also be in the library any opportunity I could get, reading stories about folklore and different legends from the Appalachian Mountains in the southern region. And I really didn't start investigating until about 13 years ago. I was approached by a member of a team, and he wanted me to look at some photos. And so through those photos, essentially, I was going in and debunking or trying to give a logical explanation as to some of the things that this particular team was capturing on some of their investigations. And so through looking at those photos, they invited me to join the team. And I really started at that point investigating by really looking at photos and doing the social media and putting the videos out, that sort of thing, for this particular team. And I was with them for about 8 years until I came out and started Ghost Biker Explorations.
So you travel around doing it then?
I do. I travel all over the country.
Well, that's got to be great. You're out there and it's freedom, right? You're doing something you like and it's freedom. You just travel around doing it.
Exactly. And combine that passion with my passion for motorcycle riding, and it's the perfect mix.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say you have bad days, right?
No, not at all. I mean, it really, Ghost Biker kind of morphed from that team. Essentially with the team, we were going out and we were investigating somewhere, usually once a month. It would either be a commercial location, or we really did a lot of residentials as well. And so when I wasn't traveling with the team, I did travel for work. And usually about every weekend I was traveling across the state to go and visit my parents. And so when I would do that, I would go on my motorcycle, and a lot of the time I would just go and visit different locations and take photographs. And so I really kind of got to thinking, because the photos were really getting a lot of attention on the social media. And so I kind of really started thinking, well, why don't I, rather than just documenting this through photography, really sit down, come up with a marketing plan, a look and a feel, and really be serious about Ghost Biker and combine those two passions, the motorcycle, well, actually 3 passions: the motorcycle riding, the paranormal, and also the love of history. And it really took off a lot quicker than I had anticipated. As it should.
It's important to document things like this. I'll tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going out there and you're investigating, it's not just for the public that watch it and like it, but for yourself, reflections. It helps you evolve. That's how
absolutely.
What me doing this podcast, when I first started this podcast, I had zero belief in afterlife. My thoughts were, well, when the computer turns off your brain, that's it. It's game over. As I've done the podcast and even the off-air podcast interviews, I've evolved significantly, because now you read studies, and when you read studies and you hear people's accounts, you have to make room for the idea that there's definitely something more to it than the lights turning off.
Absolutely. And, for me, if, not just the study of the paranormal, but through my paranormal journey here, I've actually found that it's been a very interesting study of life, if you will. And, the people who do the paranormal and that sort of thing, I've really learned a lot through the whole process. In fact, the paranormal has been really something that's helped me to come out of my shell. Being a very introverted and artsy person, I was usually behind the camera rather than in front of it. And so by turning and completely documenting my travels and putting it out there, it's really helped me to grow, to not be afraid to step out and speak. And also, really, and most importantly, it really has strengthened my belief in an afterlife.
Yeah. So now that you're doing this, what are your, prior to the investigation, what was your position on post life?
I'm a very spiritual person. I've always, growing up here in the Bible Belt of East Tennessee, I was always in church every Sunday and really grew up with a Christian belief and background. And so for me, I've always believed. I didn't really know necessarily what we were speaking to, or, how it is when you see, the interaction on TV and that sort of thing. I never really knew if that was real or kind of something made for TV.
Right.
But when I really got in here and started getting these intelligent responses and getting responses where, because one of the things that I like to really see when I do these investigations is not just if it's a residual or an intelligent haunting, but rather, can they actually see and experience us? And so for me, I've been able to gain evidence. And so, like I said, this has really just strengthened that belief that I had all along and really made me more comfortable with death, because I've really found the evidence through doing this, at least the evidence for myself, that we are able to speak and interact with these spirits that have gone on before us. Sure.
And, it's important to realize, here's the thing. This is what I've learned so far, or at least the theory I'm sitting at from what I learned. We're definitely all energy, right?
Yes.
If you look at the human brain, and I've said this a lot, I know I'm playing this broken record. I have to. If you look at a cosmic web and then you look at the structure of the human brain under imaging, a lot of similarities in that construct. And so I've evolved to think now that we are pure energy. Our soul and our consciousness are one and the same. And that's the big problem with science, that they have pushback because they can't identify this thing. They can't study it. It's energy. Right. Until they, and I'm sure someone out there is working on it, until they can learn how to harness the energy and study it adequately, we're not going to have the answers to that. And the biggest pushback people give you and other people that investigate is exactly this. It's parallel to their normal. And that's the biggest problem people run into.
Exactly. And I'll give you a good example of this. My dad, he was he passed away a couple of years ago, but he was a chemistry and physics teacher, and he was well respected within the scientific community. He was also a Sunday school teacher. And so he was very faithful, but he was also very scientific. And the way he taught us growing up was he taught us that both of those can coexist. And the way you study and the way you look at things, you can really see how both of those two things go together. And that was something that he drilled into us, is the fact that we are energy. And so to be able to, when I started doing this, he never went on an investigation with me, but I would play him some of my findings. And when I started going out and doing this on my own, he started sometimes going with me on some of the more urban exploration type travels, not so much the investigations, but he would want to hear the evidence. And I could see that he was really blown away by what is this we're hearing? And, it's intelligent or it's residual. And so, he would often at that point, he's like, oh, well, you need to go down and investigate your grandmother's house, or you need to go and investigate this. He became really fascinated in it and really trying to do some explaining as to whether, is it leftover energy? Is it the actual soul or the energy in either, heaven or hell, as we believe as Christians? He became really fascinated with that and really even kind of helped me as far as some of the different experiments that I do, and really kind of trying to think through before I would do an investigation. So it's really interesting. And I know someone who was, for someone who was very faithful, but also extremely scientific minded, for him to really sit up, take notice, and take an interest in it, that really even spurred me on even more.
Yeah. Faith is a good thing. I don't want to push people from faith, because if you don't have faith, you don't have science.
Right.
You got to put faith in what it is you're trying to research. Here's my idea. And I've said this to a lot of people. I like to share to get the opinions of others. I think we get recycled. In my opinion, I think Earth is a proving ground. We're here as this is like a preschool. And depending on how we behave here, or the outcomes here, if you're bad, you get recycled. You got to start again. Sorry, you're not making the cut. And/or you done wonderful things here. You get recycled because you're needed here. And/or you go to these next levels. I think in Christianity, they're speaking of heaven, hell. I don't think humans could really perceive and comprehend what the other side is. I think there's again, when you look at the cosmic web and you see the connections, and then you try to think about we're all energy, and then you reference that to, let's say, fiber optic cables. That's sending information via energy and light, and it's doing it instantly. And so let's say you get recycled, and then you're back here on Earth again. Some of that information has a tendency to attach to that energy, right? And so that's why I think that's where a lot of these people are like, oh, I had a previous life. I think they have information that's still attached from a previous existence, personally. So
yeah, and that makes perfect sense. As to why they would, because that's something that's always been fascinating to me when you hear some of these stories, because some of the things, especially children, that they talk about and they remember, it's hard to kind of deny that when you hear some of those stories.
When an 8-year-old kid is giving you details of a mission from World War II, and
yes,
he should definitely not know that thing. Even missions, not even just history books, missions that were considered classified. How do you deny that?
Yeah, or stories about a hotel, being in a hotel and being able to perfectly explain it from the 1920s. Before this place burned up, or getting stories about a family. It's kind of mind blowing. And it's really hard to explain.
Well, and the biggest part of this too is, unless this kid is a super spy with an IQ north of 140 who memorized every detail, I don't. There are genius kids out there that still have to study and prepare for speech, let alone a fabrication. So, yeah. At first it gave me pause, but then when you reflect on it, I'm like, well, how the hell is this 8-year-old spitting this out? It's not possible, right? I remember being 8. I'm a pretty smart guy, pretty smart kid. I could not word for word recite what that kid was saying. So
right.
You have to acknowledge that at some point.
Yeah, I think you have to sit and you have to look at the bigger picture and look at the possibilities. I really feel like you do, even regardless of, and that's what the paranormal, I believe, does as well, whether people want to really, admit it or not. I think it really challenges a lot of our beliefs. And I believe in part that's why a lot of people are potentially uncomfortable with it, or will say, well, I just don't believe, because I think it really challenges them when you really sit and start to look at all of the different evidence and look at science and everything. I think that, it really makes people kind of question what maybe they've believed all their life.
Yeah. It's unfortunate too, because humanity has this habit of, we need a purpose, right? We spend, I do too. I'm guilty of this. I spend a lot of time looking to the sky for answers constantly. And, you know, it's a healthy thing to do because then it causes curiosity. Curiosity forms theory and then eventually science. And I personally think eventually Elon Musk is going to have this Neuralink going, right? I think when that starts to, you know, get in its testing phase, I think the question of consciousness / your soul, I think we're going to start making discoveries. And I say this because this is a chip that's implanted in your head, and it's supposed to help correct certain medical issues that would be neuro, right? And I think this is going to start detecting things you know, you wouldn't recognize. You can't see it in a scanner. You can't get it in CT or CAT scan, you know, or MRI for that matter. I think some answers are going to come around because
it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. There's companies out there that are trying to right now, real time, map the human brain with the idea of uploading, downloading consciousness, which, you know, good luck with that, but I'll sign up. It sounds pretty immortal to me, but
it's, you know, it's fascinating and it's scary all in one for me. Just because again, I don't know, it's amazing the things that we're learning, but it's also, you know, what are they going to do with that information? And, you know, when I look back and see how, you know, it's kind of like when they were talking about releasing the information on, you know, aliens and whether they exist. I have to step back and wonder if, you know, humans as a whole, if, you know, how they could handle some of this information.
Well,
and would it cause chaos?
I think it would. It's unfortunate. I hate to say that, but
yeah,
you know, I say this a lot in this podcast. We still have division currently, like with racism and religion and politics, and you can't go to a football game without the threat of violence because of a jersey. So now introduce another race, right? Forget it. We'll have a whole new breed of racism out there. And or how about this? Technology gets to the point where we can make these bodies and we can now charge souls to, hey guys, you want a new body? You know, you don't have to go to the next plane, you know? And then there's going to be a new reason for division. It's the big factor here is humanity. That's we cause more problems than necessary. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we freak out, you know, at a toilet paper shortage and, you know, chaos ensues, you know, or we create our own chaos, you know, so it's, you're exactly right.
You know how many times I watched two politicians on TV, both of them speaking the same positive message, but because they're on separate sides, it's, they find reasons to poke holes in it.
And people won't listen just because of a label.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It blows my mind. And these two guys, I'm not going to reference who they are, but they were speaking. If you really break it down to its simple form, they were both have the same agenda, but because they're on opposite sides, they have to poke holes in one another's agenda. Although it could be great for everyone. I don't know. We're still doing Roman stuff. It's crazy.
Exactly. And again, I mean, I think that's what is so fascinating about this whole thing is because, you know, for me, it's been, you know, not only just a study of the dead, but also a study of the living and the way, you know, we react and feel when you're talking to somebody. And then just the different regions of the country and the different generations. And, you know, for me, it's very interesting, just the study of the paranormal and, you know, just to see how, for me personally through this, it's just been a complete growing experience, mentally and physically, you know, with everything I've been doing with it.
Right. Before we get to some of your aha moments, like, you know, in your investigations, I'm going to give you some food for thought.
Okay.
Planet Earth is 4 billion years old, give or take. You know, predates religion. There very well could have been civilizations here prior to man. They could have been bipedal. They could have been whatever they may have been. They could have been intelligent. Just like us, their energy stays behind. And when you reference that to like the old man that died in a house and, you know, people get haunted because it's his house in his eyes, like you're in my house, you know, and that's the haunting for that. Now imagine these things like, well, this is our planet. And I take that in mind and I think about all these reports. I've read a lot of reports about demons and all sorts of other stuff. And when I hear this, I think, I personally don't think hell exists, personally.
Okay.
I don't even think heaven exists. I think we go to different planes. This is my own personal theory at this point. Like I said earlier, I think Earth's a proving ground. Depending on how you are here is what level you go to next. But just like humanity, like there's people that die instantly, gunshot, and they're lost. They're between these worlds because they don't know what happened to them yet. You know, they're walking around lost. And there are some people that have pushback. They stay behind, the same energy. This could be done for things that have lived here prior that are, who knows what they are. So when people are investigating, and I talked to a lot of investigators, like, well, there's something here, but it wasn't human, and it was creepy, and blah, blah, blah. Split that in two. One, all right, let's say it's creepy, and it's something from a billion years ago. Yeah, it's going to be in a bad mood. You're on its planet, you know, and it's going to have ill intentions, and or maybe it's a good thing, right? It's not a bad energy, but the way it communicates sounds bad, you know?
Right.
Because how are we going to tell a difference, you know? So we don't speak their language, and they could have a depth to them. I mean, we don't know. So so let's jump with that. And by the way, by me saying that, what do you think of that?
I mean, I think, again, you know, I mean, my opinions do tend to, my theories and stuff that I believe it, they do tend to kind of change and morph with the more that I'm into this and the more I'm learning. I have heard those theories as well. And I think that, I think it's possible. I do believe that there are things, I guess, that haunt or communicate with us that maybe at one point weren't human. You know, we can call them demons if you want to, or, you know, something else of that nature. I do believe that they are out there. I do believe that they do exist and that it does happen. I believe that it is more rare. And this is, again, just my opinion. I believe it's more rare than what paranormal entertainment shows and some people think, you know, but I do believe it does happen. I do believe in a heaven and a hell. What we're communicating with, you know, my two theories tend to go, and like I said, everything does kind of shift and change, you know, the more I get in and learn. But I believe either you know, this is leftover energy inside of a location, or, you know, based on either an event or a specific location. I believe that it is energy, and that, you know, the soul has essentially gone on to either heaven or hell. But then on the flip side, because we've gotten intelligent responses and that sort of thing, other times I tend to think that heaven and hell may be closer than what we think it is. You know, in our mind, you know, people think that it's something far away, and you know, that you're not, you're gone, and that's it. You're somewhere else. But I do believe that maybe either it's around us,
or parallel
just
to
on
us.
sort of a different, just sort of on a different plane.
Right.
And that there's, because I don't believe that everybody becomes a spirit, or, well, I don't want to say a spirit. I don't believe everybody becomes a ghost in the sense that, you know, we die and then everyone is just kind of walking around as a ghost. Like, I don't necessarily believe that I can just reach out to my father who passed away of a heart attack. But I do believe that essentially that heaven and hell could be closer than what we think. And at times either the veil is thinner and in the place that we're communicating and it's able to come through, or that essentially, you know, maybe some of these spirits of our loved ones or that sort of thing are given the opportunity to come back because needed for some reason, whether it be to give us a message or to, you know, pass something along because either we're upset or struggling with something. Now, I do believe that when it comes to that, you know, the darker hauntings, like you had mentioned, I do believe that a lot of that, you know, people being scratched, people hair being pulled, that sort of thing. I do believe that is mistaken for more of the negative activity. Like what you said, maybe either that's the only way that they can communicate with us, because we see it different ways. We have ones who manifest into shadow figures, ones that are able to show themselves as a full body apparition, ones that are able to speak. Some of this different activity requires more energy. So maybe either that's the only way they're able to communicate, the only way they're either able to get our attention, or, it's just, again, maybe they are upset
regardless if they're benign or not, if let's say they want to hug you or they want to hurt you, both cases, they have to manipulate energy to do so. It's not going to feel pleasant, period.
Right.
They're trying to they're breaking a plane to have physical contact. It's not going to be a great experience, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes because they are either trying to communicate or trying to touch us or whatever, I think that sometimes it can be looked at as a more aggressive type activity. And I don't think that aggressive style of communication translates to negative or demonic or something that was not once human. Like I said, I do feel like that does happen from, it's really hard because when you talk to someone and they say, okay, I'm taking my beliefs and all of this stuff out of it. I think that that's really hard for someone, especially if, or take religion out of it. If you're a religious person, I think that's hard to remove that. If you're not, obviously it's a lot easier. And so, with my upbringing and belief system, I do believe that there are angels and demons out there, but I just think it's something that it's definitely more rare.
I think those are representatives of something larger. Right? Because back to what I was saying about the cosmic web. When I look at that, and I'm sorry to reiterate that, but every time I look at it, it reminds me of a very well-crafted, enormous fiber optic connection. And so perhaps with heaven and hell, when I say I don't believe in heaven and hell, I don't believe in those terms, right? We're talking, right. We're talking biblical stuff. That's just a term we use because, and not to knock the Bible, but remember the story where they're building the Tower of Babel to get to the top to find God strikes it down. We have NASA now, crying out loud, so
right.
It's a matter of connection. So when I was saying about recycled, well, some of these people, some of these energies are just so bad that the next stop for them is like, all right, well, this guy's just not going to change his freaking attitude. It's time to send him over to that other place, They're done with them. Yeah. And then some of the people that are more advanced they go to a realm where they're going to be better fitted. They're definitely, in other words, imagine these higher beings, we'll call them, say, all right, this guy's a bit advanced for Earth. There's no reason to recycle him here. Like we could utilize him on, say, that location at the end of the cosmic web, and that's where so I have that kind of belief system. To go back though, on some of the darker energies and the misconceptions, I'd spoken to a psychic off podcast, which I tend to do a lot, especially the ones that don't want and those are the ones I like. They don't want to, I don't want to be on the show. I don't need the attention. Okay. I respect that. And she had told me at one of her locations that these people are being just tortured by this spirit. And so and it was speaking to him in a language you understand. It sounded angry. And it turned out to be the lady who was speaking in Mandarin. She was asking for help to get out of the house. And,
wow.
So the noises these people hearing and the voices they're hearing sounded evil, but just another language that they didn't understand. And that same anger was actually dread on the behalf of the spirit. It's lost. It doesn't even know it's dead. And so when I hear things like that, it makes me take a step back. Like, we really, really have to evaluate better. We don't know. You can't walk in a room at a cross, like, I command you out of here. You don't know why they're there in the first place. They probably need help, Like for me, I don't know, man. I say this a lot too. If I stay behind, man, I feel bad for people.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing too. I mean, there's so many facets in the paranormal and so many studies and such. And, for myself, like I said, what really got me into it was the history and the storytelling side of things. And so usually, and of course, you never know when you go to a place and start asking questions and start really trying to really dig in and see who's there. You may come across something a little more negative or an angry spirit,
Sure.
but for myself, that's typically not what I seek out. Now, I'm not going to lie. I like true crime. I like a good dark story,
Oh, we all
so,
do.
so the darker locations are always fascinating to me. Not so much, can I go in and contact a demon or anything like that? That's absolutely not what I go into. But, when a location is rumored to, well, when you go in, the spirits that are in there, they don't particularly like women, or all of these different oppressive events occurred, and 5 people have committed suicide after going in there and all this stuff. When I hear a place that has claims like that, I'm instantly at that point intrigued and want to go in.
So you're like me. You're a weirdo. I gotta go.
Exactly. That's exactly. And I want to see, because there was one in particular, actually 2 different locations, and one in particular that it had this reputation of being a dark, evil location. And so, what better way to take a girl's trip but to pack up and grab your best friend and go to the location and see. And we actually went to a couple like that, but I didn't want to know the experiences per se, what everyone else had. I just wanted to know, A, the history, and 2, some of the rumored stories that people had encountered, rather than the hot spots, I guess is what I mean. I really didn't want to know the hot spots of a location. And I went in, and I'm a generally positive person, upbeat, and, really am not affected by a lot of things like that. And I went in, and I honestly had a much different experience than what the places had. And so I ended up going back and doing a lot of reading about this particular place. And there was a book that talked about some different paranormal investigators and experiences they had there. And it was nothing like the experiences that I had. Now, some of the evidence that I captured did corroborate some of the experiences that these other people were experiencing. But as far as being in there, I did find it to be a rather depressing location. But that was really more the extent of it. And I kind of felt like it was because the state and the shape of the house that it was in when I went. And so for me, while I do like those, and I will usually during my season, I will go and investigate maybe one particular location like that, I really tend to stick more to the places that have a really rich history or really interesting story. That way, I can really talk about the travel to the location, talk about the place, and then really see if some of the evidence that I'm getting can really validate and corroborate the history that you hear about those specific locations.
That's a good approach. And I'm glad you said about the house. So, that's a good point. Anger is one of those things that comes in spots, but depression is nonstop. I think that negative energy would definitely have a greater presence than anger itself, because anyone that has depression knows that's a lingering thing. And to your point, let me read this to you.
Okay.
This is from a month ago. Woman, it's a psychic and a woman. Woman had entities there. She was not really bothered by them. She was aware. It turned out painting the house and redoing the garden made it go away. That's all.
See, and I'm a firm believer that, and that was kind of, so, a lot of the time, like I said, I do a lot of research on the location before I go. You've got two different mindsets when you go to these different locations. One, you have the people who just kind of go in cold, try to see, what the place tells them, that sort of thing. Then you have the others that research, and then you have the ones, so I guess there's 3. Then you have the ones, they want to know the hot spots and that sort of thing. For me, I try to spend double the time researching as I know I'm going to be spending investigating and also going through all of my evidence. And again, I don't want to know the hot spots. I don't care to know, some of the encounters that people have experienced, whether it's, shadow figures, disembodied voices, footsteps, those sort of things. But I don't want to know really where, and I don't want to know about specific encounters. And so that way, when I can really research the history and go in and really see how it affects, because with this particular location, I was more curious about, because again, it was reputed to be one of the most evil houses in America. And I really left with the conclusion that, yes, this house is haunted. Is it the most evil? Not from my perception. However, I kind of believe that, the demons that were in this house were the demons that we had within, that we brought in with us, whether it be the demon of depression or anger, that sort of thing. It really seemed like it was more what people, this is just strictly my opinion, it seemed to really be more what people were bringing in with them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Was reacting to the house. Because, and one example of it was, so, this was pretty fresh after my dad had passed away. And, I was in there with my friend, and we found it was really quiet. We were really surprised at the shape that the house was in and the condition it was in. And we were spending the night there. We had brought cots and everything. It was going to spend the night. And we found that a lot of the time, she and I would sit there, and we would start having these really deep conversations, really deep emotional conversations while we're sitting there. And it almost acted like a therapy session, if you will. And, we were both kind of like, we would find ourselves stopping. Why are we talking about that? What is bringing this out? And so I found I was unable to get, when I went through, all of my different evidence at that point, I found that I just wasn't getting any responses. And I'm like, that's crazy, because if this is supposed to, and again, you go to a location, it may be a quiet night. It don't mean that it's not active, but I'm just like, it's almost too quiet. And you just got the feeling, for some reason, it just didn't want to communicate. And so one of the experiments that I decided to try was to leave a camera running, turn a spirit box on, and just go outside the house and see if there was any difference. And when I went outside, I guess I was out there for about 45 minutes, and we were just sitting out there. That's when we were having one of those kind of deep conversations. When I went in and reviewed my evidence, or not, when I went in and then reviewed the evidence later, when I stepped in, the camera had died. And actually the gimbal had died first. So the camera was sitting there tilted sideways. And then the light that I had on, just for creating some ambient lighting, it had died. So something was really drawing and pulling energy, because they should have lasted longer than that 45 minutes. And the spirit box was still going. And so when I went back and reviewed the evidence, I captured some really incredible stuff. And it was like there were 3 entities in there having a conversation. Part of the conversation seemed to be about us. And this was just your regular standard SB7. And it was a woman. And she was like, "They're gone." And like asking the question, "They're gone." Oh. And then you have another that it was like this man who was angry at one of the women, and he kept telling her to shut up, and he would say beat, and he would say hurt. And the woman, at one point she was, help, hanged, dead, some of the things that they were saying. But then it's like they would kind of talk about something of the past, but then also, coming back, different things, kind of acknowledging us. And so it really led me to believe that, I don't know if it was the energy that I went in with, but they definitely did not want to sit and talk to me until we left the room. They were aware that we were there. They were aware that we were doing something, but they did not want to talk to us. And so I just found that really interesting. And I'm glad that I left the SB7 going, because I kind of thought after it was all said and done, I thought, well, maybe we got something, maybe we didn't. But then when I went back and listened, it was a pretty incredible SB7 session.
Yeah, hearing that, which good job, by the way, hearing
Thank
that, when you go to paranormal spots that are considered to be hot, I have to think that what you bring there is definitely reflections of the energy you have.
Yes.
I believe that. And as far as the camera and equipment suffering from an outsourced energy, listen, it's not abnormal. Military applications show that we use external energies to drain batteries or destroy equipment. This is common practice in military applications. So now you're talking about a being that's pure energy, and they're trying to play with the instruments. You don't know the outcomes of that. It's
exactly.
It's creepy, actually.
It really is when you stop and kind of look at it, because we both did feel kind of down when we were there at times, but more because of the conversation that we were having. And we ended up doing a tarot card session, which I that's not something I typically do at an investigation, but we were just like kind of at a loss because it just didn't feel like we were getting much interaction. And so I let my friend that was with me, I let her read 3 cards for me, and they were really spot on to the situation that was going on. And so it was something that we tried some different experiments there, and to really just be able to see, because to me it's kind of like the things you don't get seem to really validate the things when you do get stuff, Right. So the things you don't get are to me just as important. Because if we were batting,
keep in mind, for me, for a spirit, right? When I do go to the next plane, sorry, I'm going to bother you. Mm-hmm. When I go to the next plane, I imagine if like yourself was there and you're doing an investigation, and I see you're using, a Ouija board. That doesn't, as a spirit, that doesn't interest me, right? Mm-hmm. But then I see you have cool equipment, and that's an interest me as I am here, as I am there, right? So I see the equipment. Yeah, I'm going to interact with that equipment. It's cool. It's got my attention. Not all spirits, when you're investigating, they're not going to, I don't think every investigation is going to be the same. It depends on their interest, right? Because again, as we are here, as we are there. And so in your case, when you're using the cards, you might have caught the interest of one. Like, well, that seems like something I get into. And sure enough, I mean, you have to make room for that too. Because again, people seem to forget. You're treating ghosts like they're creatures from some movie. They have interest like they did here. It's the same energy. It's our consciousness. It's just in its pure form. And it's even more focused. So if you're doing something, I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, I had a friend who lived in a house, and they always spoke about these ghost hauntings in his house. Like everyone would speak of this. My friend Sean. So I go there. There's a group of us, and we're all drinking beer and hanging out. And I'm like, I'm staying the night here. I want to know. I'm one of those people. And the next day, everyone had some sort of experience, but not me. And part of that reflections thing, I think they're like, oh, look, this guy's really into it. Let's ignore him.
Right.
That's what it feels like. I never witnessed anything. Like I had friends that witnessed things. And I just never, as a kid, even before then, as a little kid, I told this story plenty on this. We used to sneak out at night, go play manhunt. Sorry, Mom, again. But we would sneak out, play manhunt, and there was this lake in where we lived, and a woods on the other side of it. And all my friends that I saw these, like, I guess these shadow things on the other end of it. So I ran to it. I mean, because that's the nut job I am. I die in every movie. I ran to this location, and nothing was there. I was so disappointed. And then you have that moment where you live in Florida, and you're like, wait a minute, there's gators out here, snakes. What the hell am I doing? It's the middle of the night.
Right.
So yeah, it's unfortunate for me. I don't witness anything. I think the reflection there is, I think if there are spirits even around me now, they're probably like, this guy won't leave us alone if we let him know we're here.
Right. They're guarded. And
yeah. Like, listen, just get on the podcast.
That's right. Self-preservation.
So yeah, I kind of agree with you about the reflections, because, humans, go into a room of people that are angry and you'll feel that. Even without even being there, you can always tell when someone's depressed because you could feel their depression. Like you get that, I'm getting bad vibes of this guy. He's making me sad, you know? And then now talk about focused energy in a room. Focus. It's all they are. It's pure energy. There's no distractions, no TV, no cell phone, whatever they are as here, as there, you know what I mean? So I agree with you in a lot of that.
Yeah. And that's what we say too, because, you know, my business partner and I, we run the historic Scott County Jail. And so, we're in there all the time doing, investigations, and teams come in and do investigations. And so, you know, one of the things we talk about when, you know, we're doing different things at the jail, and I think, you know, my business partner agrees with me on this, but you know, people will want to walk in and they're like, oh, there's a portal, there's a demon, there's this, there's that. And it's like, we're in a freaking jail, you know? So, so it's like, you know, you're not going to necessarily expect these to be the pillars of the community, the upstanding individuals that, you know, are going to sit down and be just a delightful spirit encounter. You know, they may not necessarily be bad as far as like trying to hurt you or anything like that. But, you know, we've never encountered anything evil in there or anything quote unquote demonic. We have had some more aggressive, darker type energies in there, but again, you're in a jail. So really, you know, ones you're going to encounter. We had on one particular occasion, we were using an Ovilus and the EDI Plus box, and then also just our recorders. And the EDI Plus started spiking some pressure changes. Right at that point, the Ovilus spoke and it said the word wrong. And so my business partner is like, wrong. Was somebody wrong about you? Did you do somebody wrong? You know, what is wrong? And right after that, we both hear this disembodied voice coming from the hall right out from us that says, and it was in a very thick Tennessee dialect accent, and it was a male. There were no males on the property. It was just me and her. And you hear this male say, "You girls are going to die." And it was a full sentence.
Wow.
And, you know, we hear it and we're hearing it just this kind of like this creepy, kind of like, "You girls are going to die." We couldn't make it out. And we're like, you know, oh, I hope the recorders caught this. And sure enough, when we, you know, went back and we saw the succession of events there and was able to listen to it, you could hear it as clear as can be on the recorder. And it's, you know, we were like, okay, well, you know, again, is it something evil and angry that's going to kill us? No. You know, we're in a jail. So obviously there's a lot of posturing going on. There's a lot of angry people in there. And I believe that was why, you know, we got the response that we did in that instance. I now know,
I kind of just, in hearing you say that, lets me know why spirits would never talk to me. I'm such an antagonist. It would have been like, "You're going to die." You don't say, Slick. We're all going to die.
Exactly. You know, it's funny you say that because I get threatened on multiple investigations, and I had captured a really good one that it says, "Miranda, you're going to die." And it was as clear as can be. It was myself and my videographer that follows me on investigations sometimes. And again, we captured it on the recorder. We also captured it on the video. And so
and you have all this on your channel, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And so I was kind of laughing about it at that point because I'm like, okay, first of all, we're all going to die. So, you know, and I mean, I hate to laugh about that, but it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, I know. Now, do I want to challenge a spirit? No, I don't want to challenge a spirit and say, "What can you do?" I mean, I have a healthy respect, but again, you do have to look at the situation because it is very common when, you know, you go to a place for them to yell at you to get out, stop,
right.
You know, all of this. And, I've been asked that a lot, that it's like, oh, well, they weren't happy you were there, or this and that. And it's like, well, that's really kind of a common response, that people will get at these places, either, because I do tend to investigate a lot of locations that aren't overly investigated, I guess. And so, essentially you're going into their space.
Right.
And so, just like with people in today's world, we wear out our welcome sometimes.
Yeah. You got to be careful. Like, look, when you're investigating spirits and you're worried about the spirit, the most dangerous thing around you is a human. Every time.
Yes.
Not every time. Right. So
yeah.
I picture myself now. Let's say I'm out there and someone's like, Adam, you're going to die. I'm like, well, that's great. Now let's have a sit down and talk about what it's like where you are. Right. Because that's my mind. I want to know. You can threaten me later. Let's just have the talk.
Yeah.
It's got my curiosity now that maybe I am such an antagonist that's why they don't speak to me.
Maybe it is. I mean, that's actually a very good theory, because I do feel that it's the approach that people comes in with, because, I mean, it could be the spirit you're dealing with, or it could be the approach, because, like take, for instance, the Ma Barker house in Ocklawaha, Florida. That was one that I highlighted this past season, and it's one I'm only one of 2 teams who have actually been able to investigate there.
Where's that place?
It's in Ocklawaha, Florida. It's the Ma Barker house, and it was the site of the FBI shootout with Ma and Fred Barker.
Huh. Because I live in Florida. Believe me, I'm not going to give permission. I'll just go.
Well, they've since moved the house.
Oh,
Originally it was on the original property, and they floated it across Lake Weir. The original owner was going to sell it. They had actually kept it in the same style that it was back in the 1930s. The furniture that was there during the shootout, it's still in there. I mean, you can go and you can stick your fingers in the bullet holes. So the people who had it originally, they had the presence of mind to preserve it as it was. The current owner, the past owner, they were going to sell it. And so they did sell it to Marion County, Florida. And Marion County, they've got this open clearing, this park that they were going to develop around the house. And so they floated the house across the lake and set it up there. So it's not open yet for investigations. I'm not really even sure if it will be, but
I think you're underestimating. I'm a huge pain in the ass. Like, I will harass them daily. Listen, is that ready? Is it ready yet? I mean,
I think a lot of people have.
Yeah, I'll take it to the exception. Believe me.
And so anyways, my one of my friends was the first team to be able to go in there and investigate, and she did work as a docent. And then I went down to visit her. She was able to get me in. I did an investigation, and I highlighted it this season. And my point on this is that, when I come in and I'm trying to communicate and speak with the spirit, I always have a very respectful approach. Yes, sometimes you do have to change the way you talk to them, because the way you talk to someone in a prison is going to be completely different as coming in and talking to, someone inside of, a sweet old lady inside of a home, right, or whatnot. But I had come in and I was getting some interaction, and I was also trying some different trigger items. I was trying money. I was trying my pistol, different things that I felt like,
we'll get a response.
Would be, germane to the situation. And so, and I tried some of the same experiments just in different rooms to see how it could react. And it was actually a very, very active investigation. But I found when I was talking to Fred, I had to talk a lot different than I would typically talk when I would go in, because he was used to a dominating female, his mom, talking to him in a certain way. Right. And so I found that once I changed my approach of how I spoke, I started getting a lot of reactions, a lot of responses, everything from, they would turn the different tools on command. They would, I had some bullets sitting up. They knocked a bullet over. I was also getting some really good disembodied voices, and even capturing some things on the SLS camera. And so, I found that I really had to change that. And that was kind of different because, again, normally I'll go in and I'm in your home, so I'm going to speak to you in a respectful manner. But my friend was like, look, you need to, she's like, he's used to a dominating female. Why don't you try that? And sure enough, as soon as I changed that. So I'm a firm believer that, if you have a antagonizing approach or, it all depends on the way you go in. And then also the way that those particular spirits you're trying to communicate with, the way that they receive that is at least what I believe.
Yeah, because I can't tell you how many times where I thought something was there, and I'm the guy in the movie that dies. I go right to the problem, like aggressively too. It's like, where, and probably they're like, well, maybe we shouldn't talk to this guy. He seems like a jerk. It's like, that's what I get the impression anyway. I don't know. I'm gonna rethink my strategies now. Whenever I think something's around, like, instead of being so aggressive, just kind of sit back and be, hey man, it's me. When you're ready to talk, right? Maybe that's the way I got to be.
Maybe. I mean, I think that, and honestly, a lot of the time, when I go in, I do a lot of silent sessions too. I mean, it doesn't really make for good video because people, may get bored.
Well, listen, I'm going to be doing a documentary eventually. I'm going to travel. Mm-hmm. It's going to do all the big subjects, all of them, and my documentary might be boring because I'm not going to sensationalize. I'm not going to make mystery where it doesn't belong. What I can promise, if I do see something, it's A, I'm going to get the best footage and I'm going to market it, or B, I'm going to get the best footage. It's the last thing you're going to hear from me.
Right.
Because I just don't have that. I don't rationally think about what I'm going to until afterward. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So, that I might end up being another Travis Walton. You get abducted. Like, this idiot just ran under our UFO, man. We got to fix this moron now. You know what I mean? It's not impossible.
Do you think, let me ask you, do you think that because I've been asked this a couple times and I really don't know what I believe, but do you think that the alien as well as cryptid and paranormal encounters, do you think that they're all related?
I think there's absolutely parallels. On one of the episodes I had recently with Steve Murray, he's a paranormal specialist. Mm-hmm. We outline a lot of cases where there's definitely parallels. There's no question. Now, I say this because now picture an advanced life form because what we are is being studied. Mm-hmm. There's an advanced life form. They're watching us. And then as they're watching us, they see a ghost. They're like, what the hell is that? Now mm-hmm. It's got their interest, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're probably studying that as well. Do I think the cryptids are parallel to? I don't know. I think those are some anomalies. Mm-hmm. Perhaps they're experiments. I mean, I'm going to be I have someone that speaks about cryptid coming on soon. Mm-hmm. I don't know. And I only know what the average person knows about it. I've read what I could.
That's me too. That's not and I'm always asked about it a lot. And that's not so much, and I don't want to say it's not an interest. It's an interest, but it's not really my field of study. So I can't really speak intelligent on cryptids. I know of them, and I also, host a weekly live stream. And so I've had some people come in and talk about it, fascinated by it. I just don't really understand the first thing about studying it, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, as far as extraterrestrial intelligence, look, UFOs are undeniable. Our military has made that. That's what, again, put me to this podcast. When I saw that video, I'm like, there's no way. How do you explain that? You can't. Right. It's impossible. So what's driving them? I don't know. I have theory. I think they're an advanced biomechanical robot with a consciousness upload. I think they've gotten to that point, right? They're that kind of advancement. I don't think anymore. I know that there's definitely something to the spirit world. There's definitely energy that we leave behind. And I think they're observing it as well, because if you're talking about an advanced life form that doesn't view, I mean, they're operating like a species. They have to, and I say this because if they weren't operating like a species in unison, we would have been attacked a long time ago, right?
Right.
Because that would be our approach. Like right now, we don't behave like a species. Like we have too many. Well, look at me. I'm different. Everyone needs to be different. There has to be division. And we'd go to another planet, study. I'm like, well, look at all the supplies they got there. We need that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
well, I tell you, I was just listening today about the Unsolved Mysteries case about I believe his name was Granger Taylor, and to me that was fascinating. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but took place in 1980, and he was an individual who he was apparently a brilliant engineering genius, and that he had dropped out of school, but he was a brilliant engineer, and he told about a couple of weeks, maybe it was about 2 months beforehand, that he had been visited multiple times, and that he was going to be taken away on this date. And he said there was going to just be this astronomical storm that happened when he came, or when they came to pick him up, because people wouldn't be able to see the crafts when this happened. And sure enough, I mean, he said it was going to happen in 2 weeks on this date. And sure enough, in 2 weeks, it was like the worst storms that they had there in Canada. And he ends up, missing. They did find some parts that looked like his vehicle had been blown up on top of this mountain. But it was a fascinating case to really hear, because, you're talking about 1980.
Right.
And they're interviewing the people that he's friends with and his family 40 years later. And I think they said that for him to get to where he was going to be going, it was going to take like 43 months or something like that. But because of the way travel and light and all that ages, he would only age 43 months. But technically, it would be like the people on Earth that he knew, it would technically be like 150 years or something of that nature when he returned. And so, I don't know, it was just kind of fascinating, because I'm like you, I feel like when you look at everything that's out there, it's hard to deny that, we're the only ones.
It's impossible by math, let alone belief.
Exactly. That in this entire universe, there's got to be more. But just hearing the stories and hearing the guy who was his best friend talking about it and stuff, and he still firmly believes, regardless of anything that they found, that this guy was telling the truth, that he had been being visited. They wanted him for research and that sort of thing, and that they went and got him, and he firmly believes that he'll be coming back in that 150 years and either visiting this guy's kids or grandkids. Just fascinating. The beliefs,
look, what people that have been abducted, I'm pretty certain a small percentage of that have some fact there, because people would, when something's happened to you, whether you're unconscious or not. When we come out of surgery, you don't remember surgery, but right. you know the effects that something has taken place. Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with that story. I'm now going to look it up. I have to watch it.
Yeah, it was interesting because
is that a newer Unsolved, or is that an older one?
It's part of their newer podcast.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look it up.
And that's really all of Unsolved Mysteries. I mean, and as a kid, I mean, that's one of the things that really got me interested. Along with my grandma and those stories.
Yeah.
That show was really one of the things that got me interested, and so it's going back and kind of listening to that, because a lot of the time, it's if it's a alien podcast, again, if it's aliens or cryptids, it's not as much my field of study. But the more people I'm having come on to my live stream and talk about experiences and their knowledge on this, it really has opened me up to it. And so I just found that really quite fascinating, the accounts that they had. And so, I definitely recommend going and checking that out.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I don't approach anything with filters on. I don't believe it. I have this thing where I don't believe there's any information's bad. I think you just gotta filter correctly, right? Because if you might miss something. But if you walk around with a filter on, you're gonna miss something. You want to absorb everything and then filter correctly.
Right.
As far as I've been doing a little research on this, And I found that the numbers of abductees have significantly lowered since I think it was 2009 or '06, one of those two, or 12.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah. I mean, and then I had time to reflect on that and why that might be. Outside of them having to take you to do something physical, like insert a chip or whatever it may be, they don't really need to come observe us the way they used to, given that we have cameras and microphones and our phones in our pocket. Like, it's too easy to watch us now. We made it really easy for them, you know?
Right.
So, you know, and you're welcome, by the way. So that being said, I think some of the people that are taken, it's because they need a replacement or chip, or they're, you know, they are the focus of that study. It's tough to say that, it's hard to explain to someone they haven't been abducted, you know. And then you got to keep in mind how powerful the brain is. Very you could literally perceive things in any way, like play a video game. And to this day and age, like the new Matrix game, you can't tell what's real or not anymore. And or to that note as well, what we perceive, like how our brain is basically a supercomputer. And if they wanted to, they could easily manipulate what it is we are seeing. Top that off with this. Their technology is advancing like ours is, just at a better rate. So they may not need to take people like they did once upon a time. They might have a whole new approach. The brand new 2021 Zapparooey. We don't know, you know. Just like their ships. People are like, well, you know, people are they're all different ones, and they're never the same. Like, how many cars and planes and trucks look the same here? They all have their own purpose. You know, that's not fair to say. As far as the parallels of the paranormal and ufology, big parallels, huge. You got to bear in mind now, if this is an advanced race, which again, if they were not benign, we'd have been gone long ago, or slaves by now. We'd be pets. There's a song by Perry Farrell. I think it's Porno for Pyros, and the song's titled Pets.
Okay.
Listen to that song. This guy back in the 90s hit it on the nose, right? Because if they were here to be anything but benign, we'd be their pets currently. And we don't know, we're not just a channel for them to watch too. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Very interesting here on Earth. So the parallels exist. Even the orbs. I have some kind of belief system that the orbs are like they're drones or a way to view. Because if you ever notice, orbs in ufology and paranormal, they're always kind of behaving the same way. I think they're there to make an observation and then go report back to whomever it is they're reporting to. And they're studying both. So I don't know. I think in the next 5 to 10 years with our technology, I think we're going to have some answers, some questions answered. I think that's coming.
I think so. I think you're right. I mean, I think that just this, of course, you know, that big report that was supposed to be released, I think there was a lot of people let down. There was also a lot of people that were not really surprised too, but if nothing else, it at least did validate and verify, you know. So and got the conversation going. Maybe it's just kind of prepping and priming the engine for bigger things to come, you know. I think you're right. I think that the way everything is advancing, the way that if we can get past ourselves as humans,
you're asking a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there will be a lot of, I think you're right. I think there will be a lot of questions answered, and probably some new questions out there over the next 5 to 10 years, just with everything that's
that's me. It's never going to be good enough. They're like, well, there's aliens. Great. Where are they from? Well, we can't ask them that yet. Like, well, why not? You know, I'm glad you guys are here.
Let's do a new question.
Yeah. So I think that debrief, that was safe. It was really safe. And you know, rightfully so. You got to spoon feed humans, because you give them too much, they'll go crazy. If you right now, and I say this a lot, you told the world God's not real, people are going to lose their shit. There's going to be guys who are like, well, why didn't I just kill a neighbor? I never liked him. I'm not going to go to hell, right? So divorce, forget divorce, and cheating, forget it. It's all up in the air. Like, it would be anarchy, because unfortunately for the human race, the fear factor, whether it be fear of God or fear of prison, is the only thing that stops us from doing very barbaric things. And that's the truth.
Yeah, so, I mean, look at The Purge, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
if any, like, I don't care who says or what, the guy that wrote that movie, in his soul, that's what he wants to do. That's his nature. Or else he wouldn't have wrote the movie. You know? So, and how many people watch that movie and they celebrate it? You know their nature.
Yeah.
If someone comes up to you and they're like, hey man, The Purge is a really good movie, really think about that person talking to you. Because in their mind somewhere, that sounds like a great idea. So,
but I mean, it is there, you know, we, like I said earlier, I mean, we can't, there's certain things we just as a collective cannot handle. And I think that's why either you have to sort of be primed and prepped, or, you know, or you're not going to change those people's minds anyways. They're not going to be open to listen. And I think that's why we get a lot in this, where people, you know, I'll have people come up to me and they're like, yeah, do you actually believe in that stuff? And it's like, first of all, I wouldn't spend as much time, because I mean, it pretty much encompasses my life, regardless of, you know, what I'm doing. The thought is always there. The theories are always bouncing around in my head, and the plans of what's next is just always bouncing around. So yeah, if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't focus so much time and energy into it. Now, I always tell people, it's like, I'm not here to convince you that what I'm experiencing and what I believe is right. Because, you know, I mean, between spirits, politics, and religion, you know, you really can't change a lot of people's minds. Tough. But, you know, but what I do say is, I'm like, you know, keep an open mind. Look at what I've captured. Let me tell you a little bit about, you know, what was going on at that moment, you know, kind of set the stage for it. So you kind of have a deeper understanding of what I was experiencing in that moment. And, you know, I'm going to document it, and you decide for yourself, but keep an open mind and look at it. Because I never go in with the mindset that I'm going to change your mind and I'm going to try to convince you. But from all the events and everything that I do, and I do a lot of mainstream events. I do paracons and such, but I speak at a lot of mainstream events. One of them in particular is, you know, being that, you know, I'm a biker. I do a lot of events with Harley Davidson. And so I'll have a lot of bikers that will come up and they'll be like, I don't know that I really believe in that stuff, but let me tell you about this experience that I had. And so I get that a whole lot. I
get that people. Too. Listen, I do a lot of the off-air podcasts I do, or a lot of the off-air interviews I do. You know, I speak to cops on the show too. I mean, this show is not focused on paranormal and ufology. I speak about everything. That's my interest though. It's my curiosity. And like you, I'm not here to people please. I'm here to basically self-serve and get my curiosity filled. Right. But that being said, I speak to a lot of people that are either doctors or cops, and they tell me, they're like, listen, you know, I want to talk about my experience. They don't want to be on the air. Again, I get it. But when I hear this, it's like, there's no way that this guy who's a cop in Utah and a doctor in, I think, Minnesota can report the same identical experience, and they never met one another. They're completely separated. It's these little, and I don't reveal it on the podcast. I take these little notes for myself, but I hear these little key words, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not hearing this anywhere else. It's not being spoken about in public. What these guys are saying, and eventually I'll release my findings. So I'm going to have a summary, but when I hear that key word from certain people, I take note, because I've never heard it anywhere else. And believe me, documentaries, podcasts, just anything I could find. I've never come across a description of this particular thing. When I hear that, that's when all my down. This is back in like late October, early October, late September. I took a couple of these interviews, blew me away. That these two people from separate sides of the different personalities, different background, culture, professions, everything different. And they said some key words that I've heard from other people, now solidified, because I just can't find it anywhere else. So you can't approach, and when you have these people like, oh, do you really believe in this stuff? Like, good for you for never achieving anything other than what you're okay with. You know?
Right.
You know? Way to think out of the box, champ.
Right.
You're basically a lemming.
Believing.
Yeah, you're just the rest of the lemmings. Walk in a single line, fall off the cliff. You got to step outside and learn, and you got to explore, because you know how many fantastic minds there were back in the day who had fantastic ideas, and they were burned at the stake because that's a damn devil's work. Are you nuts? Like, it's mind blowing. So to that effect, yeah, I applaud what you're doing. Get out there and do it. Don't worry about judgment. Reserve that nonsense for the next life or wherever it is you're going.
Exactly. I mean, and that's what, that's one of the things that I'm trying to achieve here with Ghost Biker, is trying to really take, because the largest audience on my page, they are the bikers. And so it's the bikers, the history buffs, and then the paranormal enthusiasts. And so, that's one of the reasons I really enjoy what I'm doing, and be able to combine the motorcycle with the paranormal, because I feel like it is kind of helping to put this subculture into a more mainstream, or out there to a more mainstream audience that might not traditionally sit down and watch a paranormal show.
Right. And, it's important that you have diversity from different groups. You have to, or else it's not going to spread around. You're not going to learn. I don't know. I'm really hopeful that our government, and I'm sure our government, look, I know, in fact, the government has definitely explored the idea of using drugs for mind manipulation, remote viewing, psychics. They've used all this stuff and currently still do. And they're not doing it because, well, we'll see if it works this time. Something's got to be consistent that they're doing it. They're just not letting us know about it, as they probably shouldn't, because, it's for the safety of our country, It's like when people were we're going to march on Area 51. Why? That's where we build this stuff to keep the other people from killing us. Stay away from that. Let us have that secret, And here's the best part, too. This is something I learned recently. Are you going to see fantastic things by Area 51? Yes. Are you going to see things you're looking for? No. That's a great scapegoat. They definitely feel, well, hey, let them keep thinking that's the place. We'll get the real big deals elsewhere, right? So it's what I would do.
Yeah. I mean, why would you be so obvious?
Yeah. Hey guys, listen, there's UFOs over there. And that's misinformation. Now you got a million people marching there to look there while they were doing the real stuff elsewhere. So as far as the paranormal goes, for you, I think I'm hoping, because I'm talking to this guy, I'm begging him to come on the show. He is working on a device that would help more or less focus on capturing the energy of the room in an imaging state, right? For imaging purposes.
Okay.
And he's basing this on the Connect, the concept of the Connect. I hope I get him on the show, but if that comes to light, what he thinks is going to happen, forget it. Game changer. We're going to be able to see a lot better. And it's at said point, it's going to be something that's based on a current military application. And, what are you going to deny what they have for viewing purpose? So.
Exactly. I mean, will that, I guess, be accessible and mainstream for the paranormal community, do you think? Or
that's what his goal is.
Nice.
And a lot of these other inventors out there, this isn't just one guy. There's a lot of people out there that they have these ideas. They don't have the capital to put them to work. I said this before, I feel bad for saying, but I wish I had a photon pack, right? From the Ghostbusters. I thought that was a great idea, in fiction anyway. But there's got to be someone out there stepping up and saying, all right, how can we image energy in a room? Because again, the paranormal, the entities are pure energy. There's got to be something out there that could harness that and put it into an imaging, or whether it be I'm not going to say radar, because there is a thing called MADAR they use for ufology, but something in or around that. You ever in the movie, see the movie Aliens back in the 80s? And they had a little thing and you said, oh, boop, boop. And you see that, like something even like that. I would even take that. So I'm really hoping.
That would be nice, because I know, and I cannot think of what the camera was that I believe it was, because I don't watch a lot of paranormal entertainment shows, but I know I'd heard about it. I think it was the newer ghost hunter, well, the last generation of ghost hunters, Brandon Alvis and them. I know they were using some type of, it was like a NASA camera to be able to image. And I thought, that's awesome. That unfortunately, us as the normal paranormal investigator, we don't have access to that type of funding, as well as that type of opportunity to be able to use. Hope it works for you. Is there some way to take this and be able to make it more mainstream? but I'm always interested in that sort of thing. And I always tell people, because people are always coming and they're debunking different tools and that sort of thing. And I love my SLS. That's my Connect SLS. And I like to use it in conjunction with other tools. I've had great results with using it with the EDI Plus box, being able to map the atmospheric changes. One particular instance at the Grand Old Lady in Balsam, North Carolina, I was in a hotel room at this hotel, and I was capturing anomaly on the screen, and I was also getting fluctuations in the temperature and the pressure, and I was able to capture this anomaly on the screen, actually touch the EDI box at the same time that the pressure changed and the temperature was changing. So to me, it's like, that's really
when you have multiple instruments in concert getting a result, that's a good thing, right? I mean, that's science. That's science.
Exactly.
You know what?
And so that's what I like to do. Here's
how you give incentive to our government. If the government listens, and I'm sure they will, because I have some cops in it that listen. Here's some incentive. If you want to get, I guess, how do I phrase this so they understand it plainly? All right, you want to be able to spy perfectly? Hire ghosts. How do you do that? Find some instrument that can harness the ability to find one of them and then communicate, and then you could put them on your payroll to go to, spy on whomever it is you please. There's incentive, right? Because somebody in the government's like, wait a minute, he's got a damn point there, Not that there's any currency that they would barter with, but you'll figure that out. You're the government.
You never know. And so when somebody turns around and starts talking about, explaining the way that, the flashlight, I've had great success with the flashlight with intelligent responses and in working, together with other tools or the SLS. When someone turns around and is just like, that's junk science, I have to kind of, raise my hand and say, well, some of it, yes, may be. However, I don't feel that all of the communication is, because, if a spirit wants to use a smoke detector to communicate, we can't really limit them, and different ones will communicate in different ways. And so, if there's the energy there, providing them the ability to be able to draw off that energy, as well as who's to say they're not, that they can't communicate through our Ring doorbells. It's just, if there's a means, and you hit the nail on the head earlier, that type of
interest.
The type of tool or whatever's there and it interests them, then I think you can't limit them, that they can definitely use whatever tool that they want. It's just up to us to discern whether, and really look at the evidence and see, is there an explanation for this, and what was the circumstances going on around it?
Whenever I think of the paranormal, or anything for that matter, I always reference myself. Let's say I'm on the other side, and I'm in a room, and there's people there, and they're not acknowledging me, and I want their attention. And I don't have any other means. Some people think it's scary, but I'm going to rattle doors. Hey, I'm over here. Pay attention to me, or communicate me, or something. And so that's torture. Long period of time goes, you're stuck in this plane. You're not sure why, or something you have pushback, whatever it may be. And no one acknowledges you. You're lonely. And then you find this person, Miranda. She's got these toys and she's responding to you. And you're like, bet. I'm going to utilize anything. So I'm a young soul. I don't know how to manipulate energy just yet to use the better things, but I'm going to try for that little thing. It has to start somewhere. Everything does. You don't know what you're up. You have to reference the personality of a human versus the personality of a full energy, and what they're capable and what they do or don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I'm a pain in the ass. If I find out someone could hear me and they're just purposely ignoring me, I'm going to sing the same song over and over again until they snap. You will acknowledge me.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons too. And I've used this example before on other podcasts, but that's why I really like my dowsing rods, because you do have such a variety of different spirits, and a lot of them that we find ourselves communicating with, at least at some of the different locations that I've gone to. they know and they understand what the dowsing rods are. And so, if you've got a K2 meter sitting here and you're saying, hey, go touch that and turn that light to red. And of course, you've got multiple colors of green, yellow, orange, and red on that. Who's to say they can actually see color? So they may not be responding because they may not be able to see color.
Well, based on experience too. How experienced is this? Is this a new energy, an old energy? Like they might not have the experience to do it either. Sometimes simple is best, and work your way up.
And if you're asking them to touch a light, a lot of the time the concept that some of these spirits have as far as touching this glowing object, they may think of it as a candle. Their concept and perception may be a fire. And it's like, you don't touch that. That could hurt me. So one of the reasons that I love those dowsing rods, they're simple. You're asking yes and no questions. You're asking them to cross or leave open the rods. You're asking them to touch a rod and point, in a direction to get, a confirmation of, okay, if you're in here, can you point these to the door over there? So they're easy to use. You don't, they're also very familiar. A lot of the spirits, they know them, that they've either used them to try to find water or they're familiar with what they are. So, so for me, that's one of my go-tos a lot of the time when I'm investigating, just because of the simple fact, one, and then two, you don't have to worry about battery drain, but, they're just easy. So
what's got my curiosity?
Just to try.
Something you should try. This isn't like something anyone's ever exampled. It's just my imagination running wild.
Okay.
Get a big piece of canvas paper and then a pencil and then grind down all the lead. So it's like a powder across this thing and just leave it there and see what happens. I always want to know because I thought lead's that's
an interesting idea.
Yeah. It's a pretty okay conductor of electricity and energy, right? So perhaps maybe you just never know. It's worth a try.
I'll actually try that because one of the things that I do when I go on investigations is I always take a whiteboard, and sometimes when I'm sitting there, instead of saying, "Can you knock on that door?" or sit there and I will knock a pattern and say, "Can you finish this?" and see if they'll knock back. Again, I'm wanting to see a lot of the time, can you see me? Are you watching me? And so, I'll take and I'll write something on that. There have been times where I've written a number on there and I've said, can you tell me what this is? And I've actually got responses. I've gotten knocks before when I've written that down. I've had numbers called out. I'll just hold up fingers and have been able to get those responses sometimes in some places. So I really like thinking outside of the box, and I like your idea of trying that because that would be a good conductor. Yeah.
For me, especially that one, it's a conductor. And that's again, when you're trying to communicate with something that's pure energy, right? Mm-hmm. You want something that could be a conductor. And two, maybe something that gathers their interest. How many times, imagine this, I'm a ghost, I'm in a house. I say, and here's what my answer, like, oh, here comes another group with their toys, mm-hmm. And you're uninterested. You're like, all right, I've spoke to you a couple of times. I'm done. I want to be left alone. But you bring something new to the table and consider things like water conducts well. And then what do you mix in water? Maybe some dyes or something like that. And then the shavings of that lead, just something different, just to see what you get and focus a camera on it, let it for elongated periods of time. Then you got, flip side of the coin. My grandfather, God rest his soul, he was a nasty SOB. He did not like anyone on the lawn, knock on a door. If you were new, he wasn't like you walked in the house with your friend. He didn't even bother being polite. Like, who the hell is this? What the hell's he doing in here, right? So then factor that guy into the equation too. Of like you go to a house, like, what are they doing in my goddamn house? Sometimes you have to appease. You have to be we have to be a soul pleaser, right? And sometimes you have to use things that are otherwise different.
Yeah, you really do. And because I always say, it's like, just because you go into a place and don't get any interaction, it doesn't mean it's not haunted. It just means either they don't want to talk to me or my means of communication is just not something that's satisfactory to them. So, yeah, I love trying different tools like that because it's easy to, especially if you are getting reactions and stuff, right. It is easy to fall into the mindset of, okay, well, I've got my old standbys and, go in and, is anybody here with us? Who am I speaking with? It's easy to fall into that. And I do think, I actually saw the question posed one time, is there a such thing as too many tools or too much equipment?
No.
No.
You don't want to become, the last thing you want to be is complacent when you're trying to be a student and researcher. So you can't do that. It's unhealthy.
Exactly. Now, do I think you need to go out and spend crazy money on stuff? No, I think we can be innovative. And if we just, think outside the box and really use your science, like you said, looking at conductors, looking at, we say this a lot there at the jail. The jail is made out of solid sandstone, and it's locally mined sandstone. And there is a tributary for New River here in Tennessee that runs right back in behind the jail. It's got a huge waterfall, that sort of thing. So, and plus a lot of Native American activity there on the grounds. So you've got a lot of different things that add up to being conductors and being ingredients for a good haunting. And so, I think if we just think outside the box and think of different ways, we can get past having to go and spend $300 or $400 on a piece of equipment that, if we don't understand it, the spirits are more than likely not going to understand it. But really just thinking outside the box and using your science and coming up, and then just not limiting it, limiting their abilities. I think that we can really, I think we can
have
really
a very
learn a lot from
dangerous imagination, because in my imagination now, I go to this house, I know it's a hot spot. Now I'm thinking about everything that is conductive, right? So you put a light up top where it can cast a shadow. You use a fog machine, which has moisture in it. And then you use more of like a camera that could probably take like a slow frame camera, but I would have multiple cameras in this. And then I would have electricity in a pool of water at the bottom. Like it's dangerous, right? So, but if an energy passes through that, it's conductive. You would definitely isolate it. You would definitely, I would think anyway.
You would. I mean, one of the experiments that I did, there was a rumor in this one location, this one particular house. I covered it in my season 1 and season 2 of Ghost Biker. This house, it was an abandoned house. It had no power in it. And, it was rumored that there was potentially a portal there in the basement. And so, I don't really know a whole lot about portals. I know a little bit from what I've read, and I know what they talk kind of about the characteristics potentially.
Well, listen, anyone that tells you they're an expert in portals is full of shit.
Exactly.
Unless you pass through, so it's dangerous to say the word expert. I say that a lot. Say student, and say
exactly,
or even I'm a professional searcher of, because that's what you do. Professional, you get paid to do it. But
exactly
that expert thing.
Yeah. And so, I was wanting to use I've got several fog machines, and I was thinking, if a portal has the characteristics that they talk about, maybe I can pick some of this up with a fog machine. Well, I was, hindered by the fact there was no power there. So I got permission from the homeowner, because again, this house was abandoned. And so I thought, I'm just going to take smoke bombs. And so I believe it's episode 3 of season 1. We go in and I actually light off smoke bombs in the basement, which is pretty dangerous just because,
inhalation
but I set up a camera in there, and I think the smoke pretty well stayed for, I know I got about an hour of footage, but then you kind of have it starting to lift and thin a little bit. And so I really probably got about 3 good hours of footage out of the smoke bomb that I lit off. And then I did it on a live. I actually lit a smoke bomb off down there as well, and was live with it. And, I didn't know what it was going to achieve, but I thought, why not?
You got to try. And anyone's like, that's nonsense. Like, how do you know? What are you, an expert? Is that what you're going to tell me? You're an expert? You've done this? Like, come on.
Exactly. Because if anything shows up, anything that's, to me, I'm just looking for something unexplainable. Because, so say I do capture something, kind of some movement in there. Okay, well, I'm going to start really looking and drilling down into what I've captured to see, okay, so I tried this experiment. This is the reaction I got. What is the possible explanation? Well, was there any type of airflow? No, we had the entire area. It was a basement. We had the entire area sealed off, with the door to the outside and the door to the upper level was completely closed. Were there any drafts? Well, I'm going to go check for that beforehand to see if there are any corners or anything that's picking up. And then I'm going to go back, see where I captured the movement, and then look and see if there was anything else that could really account for this before I even go and describe it as unexplainable. So, that's what I'm looking for the most, is just something that, paranormal or not, that's at least unexplainable.
I applaud you for trying different. Listen, scientists, x-rays are pretty, in science, it's pretty accurate. It can x-ray bones, etc. But how did we invent that? It was an accident. We were testing out nuclear bombs and other nuclear devices and realized that it was casting shadows onto a rock somewhere. X-ray is an absolute accident. No one sat down and said, I want to look at bones without cutting them open. No one did that. It was an accident. MRI, another experiment that we're for war applications, and realized we could image with it. Accident. These weren't applications for it. No one said, I want to look at. So what you're doing is exploring outside the box, and I applaud that, because how do you know that something you and I talked about, we don't conjure this thing and it becomes the go-to, and not even for paranormal. What if it turns out it's an application for something more practical? You don't know till you try. That's the idea of science and experimenting. You don't know. Someone's got to breach it. You got to get outside the box.
Absolutely. And that's what, if anything, and I've taken a whole lot away from my dad, but that's one of the things that he really instilled in us was, looking at the scientific side of things. I mean, even, my dad was, he was in the military before he became a teacher, and, he was stationed in Germany, and he learned to, play pool while he was there in the military. And so that was one of the things that he and I would do, is we would go and play pool. And, he would always, the way he taught me, it was never like, okay, so we're going to go shooting this and that. It was always through physics. He was always like, now think of your physics, right. And he'd be like, hit the ball, you've got this one ball coming to hit another one. And you need, if you want it to go this direction, you've got to hit it to this point with this much force. And so that's the way he taught us with everything. And he even, in his Sunday school classes at church, it was even the same way. He would teach the Bible, but he also taught some of the scientific side around things. And I really had a great appreciation for that, because I feel that that's really has what made me the investigator that I am today.
Yeah. Dare to be different, and dare to ask why, and dare to learn more about it. Because without that, you're not going to have good outcomes. You have to.
And why bother at that point?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's too many people like, nope, I know better. Not doing it. Like, okay, good for you. Have fun at Starbucks. What do you want to say to you?
Exactly.
I have a lot of friends who are like, when you talk about this UFO stuff, man, why do you do it? And I'm like, because I want to learn. Well, are you okay with everything? You wake up in the morning, I know it all. I'm great. Stop it. You know what I mean? You're complacent. I'm never going to be a content person. I have to do something else. Always. It's just my nature.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it's one of those things where too, I was always, I would read so much as a kid that when it came time to go to bed, I would scare myself, and, thankfully, and I say that as a good way, because I know when you talk to a lot of investigators and stuff, they're like, oh, well, I had this experience or this encounter as a kid. I never had that. And I'm good with that, because I don't know how, honestly, as a kid, because I was so skittish, very, very little scares me now, but when I was a kid, I mean, it was just kind of, I don't know if I could have handled some of the experiences that some of these folks that I've talked to have had when they were kids. And so, and then too, I honestly don't know, because the human mind is, it's not a reliable witness. I honestly don't know how well, if I had one of those experiences, how well I would have remembered it.
Yeah, your memories from childhood would not serve well, because, keep in mind what a memory is. It's your brain reconstructing something. You know it, but you don't know it. It's just you're reconstructing something that's stored as data. It's not a real image that you're seeing in your mind. That's why you miss colors and things in the background, because you're just trying to reconstruct something that you know of. I think it's a good thing for me that I've never witnessed anything, because it gives me more drive, and I don't know. It's not the same drive you're thinking of. It's the drive where I watch this documentary and there's this woman like, and I saw this file. I'm like, you get to see the file? Get the fuck. I was so mad. I was like, she gets to see the file. I'm going to go find the file. I want to see the file. So that's my drive. It's just that, how dare they know more? I want to know more. So
I love it. I mean, and that's a great reason, because I know for me, I mean, I had experiences and stuff back in one house that I owned. I mean, I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I had some strange encounters there, but honestly, other than just watching, I did watch some of the paranormal entertainment shows early on, and then I'm just so busy, I don't. Even if I wanted to, I don't have the time now. Right. And, it wasn't until I went on that first investigation and actually heard some of those EVPs, saw the flashlights reacting, because you don't know what it's going to be like from what you see on television.
Right.
They sum up a week's worth of investigation in 30 minutes. And, for us, investigation is 24 hours, if we're lucky. Otherwise it's like, 12 hours or so. And there's a lot of highs and lows. And sometimes you don't even know what you captured until you go back and you're reviewing your evidence, because you don't see it in real time. But, it wasn't until I was on that first investigation when we captured some of those EVPs. And I still remember the way I felt when I was going back and listening to the recorders, and we captured some of these voices. We did not hear them in the moment. They were intelligent, and to be alone in a room, just myself, because it was myself and two other guys, and to capture a male's voice speaking Spanish, when I knew, that it wasn't any of us, it was such an adrenaline rush, but also kind of a sick to my stomach feeling when I heard it, because I'm like,
well, that's a moment of vulnerability that's exposed. Yeah. So listen, that's another big thing. I watch these videos on YouTube, and there's people and they're walking in a room and they're showing their cameras, and there's always something creepy going on, like the door would move. One thing I notice, I'm not afraid of very much, right? Mm-hmm. But no matter how tough I may be, if I have I see something, I'm going to have a chemical reaction. My adrenaline's going to go. I'm going to have shakes. My tone of my voice is going to change. The way I breathe. And it's not fear. It's an adrenaline dump. Mm-hmm. And so when I see these guys and they're perfectly still, like, oh, it's just Tuesday. This happens every Tuesday. I don't know, man. You're not selling me on that. But I do see videos, like some of these paranormal hunter people, and you can see the adrenaline's there. There's one guy, I saw his video, and I said this before in the podcast. There's this thing that's inverted in a hallway above his bathroom, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And you could see fear written on that guy. Just fear all over him. And he ran out, broad daylight, runs out of the house. He's shaking. He's like, oh. And he tries to go back in, and he walks in the house, and he gets a glimpse of it, and he says, hell no. And he just leaves. He runs out of his own house. Everything about that video. And, I don't see that guy in the news, or he's nowhere. Just that video. He's not trying to make money off it. I don't see him anywhere else. That guy sold me. And whatever that thing is, I took that image and blew it up on my computer, and I still couldn't find pixels. I couldn't find any evidence there of being faked, although I'm not an expert on that per se. But I've learned how to kind of look what things to look for. That thing creeps me out. That creeps me out. So I don't.
Yeah. I mean, and and that's the truth. I mean, because we hit on this earlier, is that, for me, the scariest are the living, and then also, being a biker, some of the other people driving on the roads. I find that a lot more of a scarier situation than sleeping alone in some of these abandoned locations. And, and that's one of the things that I do like to do. And some of that comes from trying to experiment and see what type of tactics will, get responses. But one of the things that I do like to do when I go is I do like to sleep at some of these locations. I'll spend as much time as I can actually investigating. And then if I have the luxury of being there either over a weekend or being there for extended enough time, then I'll sleep in the location. And I always have the doors and the areas on the other floors covered with cameras as well as audio equipment. And some of the best evidence I've captured have been when I've slept at these locations. I slept at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, and I slept for 3.5 hours, and I got about 3 minutes and 15 seconds of some of the best EVPs I've ever captured. And best footsteps, a lot of really good residual hauntings as well, but quite a few intelligent. And I really kind of feel like, I don't know if, again, I go in with a very respectful approach, but then again, if you're going into a prison and, they want to scare you and you're approaching them and talking to them, they may not be as apt to talk to you when you're in that active investigation state.
Right.
But when you go into that more vulnerable position, of going to sleep, because where I slept at was solitary confinement and an area that was known as the Hole. And
that's a prison you're in, yeah? Yes.
And I've got that was highlighted in episode 1 of season 2. And, I got some incredible things there. Revenant Acres, I slept there. The Grand Old Lady, I got a really, really good disembodied voice that several of us heard. We got a male's voice, and we were there was just 3 of us females on the property. So when I go to sleep, I look at that as I love going back and reviewing that footage, just because you do put yourself in that different state. And sometimes, if nothing else, I think sometimes the spirits may even be more curious about, what's this person doing?
I think you got their curiosity for certain. And then especially being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. So I look at all of it as a great opportunity. I call it, when it's not active investigating, because, obviously when you're active investigating, you're in the moment and asking questions. But, I look as I'm at a location, I look at every opportunity I can to communicate, because there's so many ways to communicate, and laying down, sleeping, and just putting a recorder on you. You never know. And look, so I enjoy that.
It's the best way. I commend your approach 100%.
Thank you.
Before we close, the name of your channel.
Yes. So my channel is Ghost Biker Explorations, and you can see that on YouTube. I'll also have the past 4 seasons on the Ghost Biker Explorations Facebook page. I do a lot of live streams there. Starting in January, I'll be starting my weekly live stream where I have different folks on. It's called Shop Talk from the Ghost Biker Garage, and that's on the Ghost Biker Explorations page. We do have one more episode left in season 4, which is the season finale. Typically my episodes drop during the month of October, and it's every Tuesday night in October we release a full scale episode. But because I recently went into a business endeavor and opened up a haunted jail and true crime and punishment museum at the historic Scott County Jail, this season kind of got extended. So we do have the season finale, which is going to drop after Christmas, sometime during the month of January as well. But yeah, people can catch up on those 3 seasons. They can also do it on the Ghost Biker Explorations webpage, which is www.ghostbikerexplorations.com.
Miranda Young, I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so much, Adam. I've enjoyed it myself.
We're definitely going to do it again. I'm going to give you some homework too. So
nice.
You have a good night, girl.
Thanks. You too.